as we get ready to move into the first operating round. One thing we didn't see was anyone reserve any shares. The reason for that is no one could buy a secondary share in any of these companies. Those are all locked in during this phase. You can only own 50% of the regionals until we got one more company out. If we had, and anyone had money, they could perhaps grab one. The reserve won't last into the second stock round. It's only for that first stock round, just to be able to guarantee yourself 75% of your company if you want it. I don't know how likely that would be. Basically, you'd have to get all the companies out. Maybe if a lot of them started kind of low, you'd have to get all the companies out and still have money left over for additional shares in someone's hands for that to make any sense. But it's okay that it didn't happen. These track rights are gone. I have to assign these suckers. And I think we move forward. I'm checking the rules, making sure I understand everything correctly. We have a lot of holes now where companies have disappeared. That's okay. So in order to do this, well, I had to open up my little box of wonders over here with the track in it. But the first railway to go is going to be the M. They had the first concession, and if we find them, they're over here. I have some cash on board, a fair amount actually. It looks like $200 kicking around in here. That can't be. That can't be. Oh yeah. Because I started with a lot of money, and then I started in one of these hexes and got some additional cash for that. Okay. So, the first thing that happens, and I'm sorry I have to swing around and cover the mess and everything, is lay track. Hey, no shit, right? That's what we're used to. But we have to spend track points, and yellow tracks equal 1. Minors and regionals have 3 track points to spend. Do I have any special effects here? No, this is the guy with who ends up getting all the Pullman cars that he can sell. So now I got to think about, you know, what the hell I'm set up with here, right? I got myself M, and what's this? The CHN is, I think, also mine. It is. My other one is this Italian J down here. So I'm perhaps going to want to hook those up, you know, over water. But so I don't have anything particularly special going on. I got to think about what track the CNJ is going to be, or CHN is going to be running, what track my company is going to be running. This little guy. And I think what I want to do is I want to start carving my way out here, because nobody grabbed the Spanish. Oh, these still exist. Nobody grabbed the, not these. These are the discarded ones. Okay. There's still a Spanish possibility of a minor there, so that's something I have to worry about. One of them could jump in and grab what I need. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a straight track first. And this is just a normal town. It's not a Y or anything. So that's 1. And now I have 2 more track lays I can spend. I don't know which way to go here at this point, which sucks because, oh wait, I've got 2 operating rounds before the next train comes up. So I may want to come into Madrid through the north. So I'm going to go up this way. Look at these tiny, tiny tracks. And then I can safely go straight. I can decide if I need to get to Bilbao first, but I think, depending on, yeah, I'm only going to get 2 track lays, but I've got first shot at movement in the 3rd operating round, so I'm okay. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to pay out for the miners, so I'll go back and do that in a moment. I don't have any stock you know, any payout option or anything is. But I do have to buy my 2+2 train. Now I counted, there are 30, well, I looked at the rules and then counted out the correct number. There are 30 2+2 trains. There are going to be 30 companies, 30 of these regionals and minors, which means those trains are all reserved. So I got to come up with $100, which I had better have. And there it is. And I have a big pile of money left working on my 3 train. I don't remember if I'm allowed to buy it yet, but I don't have enough money to do so. They run at $200. But paying 50% to the bank pool, 50% or 50% to myself and 50% to the company treasury, I should be able to get money pretty quickly. And then also, if I can hook up one of these, that's a few extra bucks for me. So I think this will work out okay. But before I go any further, let's put this over here for now. I got to pay out all my miners, and you can see they don't produce all that much, but a fair amount. So $10 for that guy, etc. We started down the path already. You can see some track being laid. There was Rotterdam, which paid for itself. I had to have the cash on hand to build the bridges, but that's okay. And you got to be careful because there's so many miners. So for example, and so many special abilities in the game. So for example, the C at the beginning of the turn could have made a choice to go first or last. Neither one seemed important to it particularly, so I'm not exercising that choice largely because I forgot. I would have rewound if it was important, but it doesn't look it. The H company is what I'm up to right now, and that's got an interesting situation. I can build track here for the LWNR, but the LWNR is going to fill that dot real soon, and there's, you know, I see no point in helping it out particularly. I think I could build track for it. I have to look up what happens, because when you float, maybe that's when you fill the dot. And these are all floated. So I also have the opportunity, so this track I can't upgrade, which is what I didn't quite realize. I'm gonna have to wait until the 3 trains come out. Now they're gonna come out pretty soon, so, but the H may not have been all that wise to put here. For me to go across here, it's gonna cost me $5 per track lay, and my token there doesn't help me. My token helps me with the run itself, so that I don't have to pay the penalty on the run, but I'd still have to pay to build these tracks. Unfortunately for me, the H is the company that only had 80 pounds on it. So I'm not going to build any track, and I'm going to have to pay 20 pounds out of my pocket for... Now, I have the 15. I could actually have extended this, and maybe it's worth it, because I'm running a 2 train here, but here I could run a 1, 2, boink, and make a little bit more money. How much more? Well, that would be $5 in my company treasury and $5 in my pocket. How big a deal is that? I don't know. My special abilities, this is going to allow me to lay free track, but I probably still have to pay the penalty on it. This one doesn't give me anything at all. One of the nice things, as long as you have actual privates, you'll get an income, so you won't get screwed even if, you know, you don't have enough cash. I've got to decide this though, and I can do that off camera. That Rotterdam track is illegal actually. Let me get that off there, because that's outside my track zone. I'm going to have to wait for the BHH to hook that up. Do I want to be facing this way if that's the case? I think not, because I'll be able to go up to green when I need to. So I think instead I'll take track like this, so I get to lay some track in the world. Now one thing, you'll see there's some nubs on all of these. I found that they're difficult to align the track reasonably, And I'm sure we're going to get some separation and problems no matter what, but I've been kind of starting to clip things as I go, and also clipping these. I usually like to do this kind of prep work all before the game starts, but man, I wanted to get this one started, so there we have it. You can see I did go into Ireland, paid out of pocket to do that. All right. Over here is using its special ability to buy this for, it gets a 1/3 discount. So it only costs it 30 bucks to cross there, and this is going to cost it 20, and then we hook up Sevastopol. We can't cut into the Balkans right away with it. We knew that. We just want to set this up so that we're in position to do so eventually. The problem, of course, is these guys can go into the Balkans right away. Well, once the first 3 trains bought. Before that, they're stuck with the, well, once they become majors, right? They can't do it as regionals, so he's going to have to create a major for that to happen anyway. Looking for companies is one of the biggest difficulties. Okay, here it is, the J. Now, I think I screwed up with this one. Over here, there's no port here, which means I can't get a train route reduction. So I'd have to run a 1, 2, 3 train to get to Tunis. I was counting on that being a 2 train. This is going to cause some difficulties. I think I can come up with the money, you know, to hook up and get myself here into Messina and across, but boy, that's not pleasant terrain. Alternatively, I could hook into here. The port token would allow me to sail out of here for free and then into there, so I don't even need the ferry. So that's not quite as bad. There's something really cool about sort of the majestic scope of a game that allows you to throw down 3 tactiles, or even 6 if you're a major, if we get to that. But of course upgrades cost more, etc. But it allows for the track to develop more rapidly. I'm sure 18 C2C, which is by the developer of this game and owner of the core company that produces them, not Mayfair, but who's really the producer and distributor, etc., was the innovator of that kind of idea of these track tile placements or tile points, because it doesn't make sense with a smaller game, but with something of this size, you can afford to allow those moves, and you know, it's just really impressive. So 1870 allows multiple track plays as long as they're yellow, and I don't think it's the only game that does so. I seem to remember others that do. But the board is so cramped compared to this, and it's got a pretty big wide open board for an 18xx game, but man, this is just so impressive, being able to lay that many tiles and everything. I don't know how much is gained by it, but at least from an aesthetic point of view, emotionally, this affects me in a very nice sort of way. I have this huge world out there, and I'm making all these track plays, and man, I'm not anywhere yet. At the end of one operating round, I made a little track correction down here in Spain. I kind of accidentally went the wrong way, and I was clipping some counters that were disturbing me. I fixed it. But other than that, everything's pretty much, well, expanded as you see it. And you see lots of little tiny rails starting out. Definitely one big problem with the G train. Where's the G train? The G train's in Austria. So I started this here to get that extra money from Salzburg. But the problem is I can't go into Germany because I don't have track rights there. And I had to buy track here. And I didn't have quite enough to buy into the $45 hacks. Even looking at, you know, using my own personal cash, which means this sucker is going to have trouble running unless the SB can save it. I don't think the SB has enough money to do so. Would have to come up with 90, and I have like 60 there. So I'm going to lose a run off the G train, which is pretty severe actually. You don't want to lose a run early in the game like that, but hey, what can you do? Anyway, stupidity reigns, at least there. That's got us moved to the second operating round, and now we go back down the line and we'll just be moving them up as we go. And this is tiring, especially when I add clipping the counters to it all. But wow, this is a lot of work to do just, you know, one operating round or whatever, with this many companies involved in the whole thing. And each of them has 3 track lays and blah, blah, blah. What's particularly bad about the G is that's the Foundry. It has 2 extra points of track lays. Now, that means once I get out, I'm going to be able to, you know, bust out, make some improvements, etc. a little bit easier. But wow, you know, this is somebody who was supposed to start where they had lots and lots of track to build, and this was just not the right start for them. Live and learn, right? Something I meant to say. I'm enjoying this, you know. There's at least so far. It's painful, but I'm enjoying it. But I'm not sure that I could stand playing something of this size as an XX game opposed. I mean, I like my XX games to be kind of tight little competitive things. Yes, they're longer than your normal Euro or whatever by a significant amount, but it's just something that, you know, it's kind of like I actually look the same way upon the Monster Civilization game that I don't know if it's been made or not. It was being kickstarted. Damn, man, if you're gonna, you know, Civilization was a long game anyway, but it always felt like kind of a competitive thing. Now, where, you know, you sat down and you're playing kind of seriously with people and trying to win really hard, and XX even more so feels that way. And something of this size, I just don't want my strongly competitive games to be this big. Again, I'm enjoying it on my own perfectly fine, I think. I don't think that I would want to, you know, say, have this set up and play it over a couple of weekends or something. We move our way into the second operating round. Played a little bit of it so far. Let's see, track expanding throughout a bit. Spain beginning to connect up. Looking at the minors or the privates, you know, it's hard to decide when to trigger them. So this guy can use his token, which would create an extra $10 run for a single city. Well, if I'm only hitting that city once, that's pretty weak, given that, you know, I get $5 in my pocket and $5 in the company treasury. So I'm going to wait at least until the $20 range, because I make 20 pounds a turn off of that, and that's kind of nice. It's my assumption that money in the company treasury isn't all that worthwhile just yet. Now, maybe if it means buying an extra train a little early, that might be significant enough to make a difference. There's a slow progression happening. So, for example, this train, you know, I'm running the same route here, but it's not really producing the kind of money that I would hope for from it. It's 50, 60, 70. I could start blasting through these hills, and I've got a discount for it, so it seems like maybe that's a great idea. Except I'm gonna dead end if I do that anyway. So why hurry things along? We'll wait and see if a 3 train comes out. I think all the companies are being a little too slow. I feel like I haven't really set things up to be able to take advantage of, hey, let's try to get that extra 3 train real early, instead of you know, instead of just laying track and running off the train. From my 1835 experience, I've learned that this is a mistake. You kind of want to try to funnel these companies so that they make bigger money. Unfortunately, in this case, it's a minor. It can only split 50-50, so I can't swallow with it or anything. With the regionals, I can swallow, but that cuts into my own income, and that seems like a bad idea. But in the long run, it's probably better if I can get a train more quickly. I'm not set up to do so yet. Start seeing really curvy track like this. You know, somebody's made a bit of a mistake. in this case, they were beaten out on the runs into Paris, and so they went up this way instead. At the end of the operating round, the good old G is just stuck here, not doing anything. I also find other problems. For example, the C. Hey, this is a minor, and not a regional. I don't know if it's able to upgrade to anything useful. I have Austrian lines that I can't really connect to, and that means I can never really hook this up. I'm gonna have to rely on something else, and there's kind of nothing else except maybe the L if it's able to blast its way up to the north, which, you know, maybe it can, but I was hoping to actually hook this up and then get down to the Austrians. Nah, I'm going into the wrong track zone in that case, so I'm kind of stuck in this little world up here. Okay, whatever. You know, there's a lot to learn when you're looking at one that's significantly different, and this one certainly is with the national borders working the way they do. The world's going to change pretty significantly at this point. So remember, I was thinking about buying a presidency with this. I may not be able to. It depends on how much cash I have, but I've got to be able to defend these suckers, which means I need to be able to buy one more share of each of them. If I can't do that, I've got a potential problem, because if somebody buys 2 shares of one of those, and worse, if 2 different people buy 2 shares of each of them, then they can float them as majors on me and immediately buy another share and take the presidency away, which is sort of the way that concessions, initial floating money, whatever, all that can kind of be negated. And I feel like a lot of the decisions are very front-loaded in terms of what corporations you have, etc. at the beginning, but there's also this possibility of stealing, at least at this point. Now, later in the game, I think corporations are going to become too valuable to be dumped, easily allowed to be stolen or anything. There's no weird mechanisms like the orange and the brown that allow you, you know, some reason that you might want to dump a company, you know, have a company in really bad shape and push it down or anything like that. Without any of that tricky stuff going on, usually games proceed in a more stately manner, like 35 does. It's not really what I like about 18xx games in general. I tend to like the ones where you have harsher manipulations of the companies, etc. But I'm not expecting that much here. Mainly I'm expecting sort of the ultimate in that grandeur and stately play, which we're definitely seeing here, at least so far. Except where things are getting screwed up. People buy shares in their own rails. That puts additional money in, makes it possible, or makes it more likely that a 3 train will be bought sometime in the near future. But, and all these shares that are out here, these shares are actually in the treasury. I just didn't feel like moving them. When it becomes a major, I'll move them because that'll help distinguish. So the money does go into the treasuries. The thing is, everybody's got their own companies, and unless they hate their company, they're probably not going to try to take over your company, or if they really want your company. Which means you can probably safely, for example, this guy has this 75% of the LNWR. He doesn't have enough money for another share of the PLM. But he can probably leave what he's got out there and still prevent someone from taking over his company. I believe the reserving doesn't work at this point, although I think the Barclays has an ability to reserve a share. The Barclays reserved share works, though, scares me. Basically, on this guy's turn, he could reserve a share of somebody's company and then immediately buy the other share. If he's got the money for the reserve, when he comes around again, he can pick that up. So he can take over a company, well, force it to float, is basically what happens. Because if somebody buys a second share of your company, you want to float your company so you get the third share, right? The panic of takeover that these two guys face, this guy's saying, you know, neither of my rails are all that impressive. If I can force things out that might be interesting. Now, what is force things out? And here's the questions. First of all, I don't know how everyone's doing. I seem to be doing pretty well because I have enough money for a couple of shares, which player number 2 did not. I thought he had a good starting capital. I must have confused him with 3. Anyway, we're not too worried if I shuffle money and make a mistake and cheat in that kind of way. We're really just trying to see, you know, what's revealed about the game more than anything else. So I'm not terribly thrilled or locked into holding either of these companies all that much, but which means I might be willing to start yet another company, which could be of some value. This guy can make it here, get you know, get a couple of bucks that way. But my track rights choices, which do not matter anymore. I had them still out there. They don't matter. All the miners are floated. So yeah, the only 2 companies left are both Russian. But is that better than boosting up my companies and getting them up to a second train, or what? You know, because I'm not sure if we can float a corporation yet. I think we can. I'll have to look that up. But even if I do want to shake things up or move things in some direction, I'm not sure which direction I want to do so. You know, do I want to just keep investing in a couple of companies that aren't very good, or start another company that nobody really thought was worth having either? I decided the eventual holding of 3 kind of iffy companies was better than any other option I had. I don't know if this is reasonable or not, but the companies are a limited commodity. I don't feel like I have what I really need elsewhere, so you know, let's use my money, and I started that sucker up at 90. That means I can't defend any of my companies if somebody wants to float them on me, but that's okay. I don't think anybody is terribly interested in floating this one especially, but even this, it's okay, but why do you want it? Why? Well, because more companies is more important. But if your own companies are better, because if you float mine, now yours are up at risk, right? Because you've thrown money into my company. So we have the first cross-player purchase. This guy buys a share of the MIDI. Why? Well, because he had enough money for a share of one of his own stocks and a share of the MIDI. The MIDI is the only thing he could have afforded, so he bought that. This kind of pushes this guy into, hey, okay, I'll buy a share of the MIDI as well. Remember, you can't sell these. So once you make a decision to buy one, a share of one of them, that money's allocated. The only way you're going to be able to make, to turn it around and sell it is if you then float it as a major railway next, which is a slow and cumbersome process. So you probably can't protect your other rails once you start committing money to one of your rails. And of course that goes true for everything, but we'll see. We're on to the start of the stock round now. The question is, do I put leaving a couple companies potentially at risk, although honestly, if nobody's bought it yet, they probably, everybody's done in action. They probably don't have enough money to buy 2 shares of it. But I could be potentially risking one of these other companies. But if I dump all the money in one of the companies, maybe I have enough cash to buy that 3 train at this point. So that's, you know, chances are I don't have that money off just 1 share. If I do, then I'd probably want to get 2 companies started on the 3 trains. Someone's rail out on them is more expensive than I thought. You could buy the 2 shares, that's not a problem. But then you are responsible for an inflated share at the major par value. So for example, if the miners were at 90, you have another 120 you got to come up with. So that's going to be $300 for one of those big rails. I found that I just don't have the cash for it. Maybe if I had started right away I could have, but then I telegraphed the move. Because I was looking at, you know, maybe floating the PLM or one of this guy's companies, because I think they're both undefended, or I can tell they're both undefended. Just in order to make sure that I get things moving and everything. I think I'm better off just buying my own shares. If somebody wants to buy my secondary companies, hey, that's their problem. You know, they may end up with something terrible that way. Like, you know, no trains and a couple bucks on it or something. Buying shares of your own company, you start thinking, wow, that's great, I'm putting money in, I'll be able to buy a train. And then you think, wait a minute, that means if I run, I no longer get that 50-50 split. But you can always pay out half, and especially if somebody else is helping you, you know, it seems like a good idea because they've put money in, you know, if you need the cash, right? They've put money in, you get some cash out of it, and the company treasury gets some cash out of it. Alternatively, even a full swallow isn't that unreasonable. I mean, you could full swallow every other time or whatever. It's not like the stock value changes at all. It's just, there's just this one order here. I realized I kind of cheated. Well, I definitely cheated here. When this guy bought his GWR, he should have just held his money if he's worried about losing control of the company. Because nobody could buy any of the secondaries until the new corporation or the new regional corporation was started. I'm going to leave that alone. But that's something to keep in mind. If you're sitting on that priority, you not only have the option to buy that next company, you can't do shit until you do. And let's see, what else happens here? So people could have floated majors, but nobody did so. I was under the assumption that I could do that, and that's no big deal. I'm going to leave priority where it is. It might have been moved, but I can't see how it could have gotten anywhere worse for him than sitting right here, which is where it is anyway. So I think it's a fair assessment to say, you know, everything pretty much would have fallen out the same way, regardless of that purchase. It is an important point to keep in mind, though. So now we're entering the operating round. Once again, the miners pay out, of course, and then we deal with a huge chain of companies. Note that the C has decided to go last, so they have a token on them here. They'll skip their turn and take the last one. They want to make sure that there's a 3 train available for them, basically, I guess. I don't know. And things are interesting. So the M, by taking Valladolid, could get enough cash on hand to buy a 3 train. But not quite enough for a 3+3. Now, Valladolid is worth 10 bucks more if I wait until the 3s are out. I don't think all the 3s are going to fall, but it's hard to tell. There's no reservation. Let me count how many there are. I don't think there are going to be 30 companies able to buy it. I think this was a company that started with a lot of extra cash. And by the way, when I said reserve a 3 train or whatever for who was it, the C over here, what I actually meant was make sure the 3 trains are out so that I can upgrade track, because I don't have a track lay otherwise. I don't think the C has enough cash on hand. As a miner, it's unlikely to. And that's the whole point. The miners are unlikely to be able to buy the 3 train. The M could just do it. But the problem with the 3 train is I connected this doinker, which was probably a mistake. So I may actually want different track and cut in this way into Valladolid to hit that extra doinker. But as things stand right now, I have a 2+1 run here, and then a 1, 2, 3 run to here. I don't know how big a difference it is, but I can get a 1, 2, 3 run going in this way. Now, if I get my dot in Madrid, things get better. But right now, the metropoli are not that valuable. They're only equivalent to Y cities, which is only a little better than the cities I'm hitting. So I can probably do without, maybe, kinda. But in the long run, I probably do want my token there. Maybe, you know, on my next run, I'll have enough money to buy the token as well as that track. So I think I'm gonna try to hit that extra doinker no matter what, though. I really should be hitting 3 doinkers, but I didn't have the money to build through there with any good conscience because I couldn't tell for sure how much cash I'm going to have, when the trains are going to fall, all that kind of stuff. And calculating to that degree is just usually beyond me. And the next railway, the GWR, which sold out all its shares, was capable of buying that train. It was also capable of dropping a dot. Now, do I need that dot? Well, kinda. One of my 2 companies needs the dot there, and I want to ensure that I get it. The other company, the Belgian, I can use my Start Harbor trading company for. Yeah, because that works on a port. So then I could slip through London if it's not upgraded to something useful. This does deprive me of getting the dot there. I may want to turn to a major fairly soon. I'm not sure. But, you know, and you got to make these choices. Likewise, there's the hard choice. Hey, 15 bucks around versus helping my company. A company maybe that I only own 50% of right now. How important is that? I don't know. Big money for the GWR owner though, 70 bucks right in his pocket. He's got all four shares of it. And that looks pretty sweet for him. That since it's after the first operating round, this 2+2 train can still be here. It's reserved. Someone holds this, essentially. This guy has to buy it. So the 3s have been able to come out even though that's sitting there. At least by my understanding of the way it's worded. If that's not the case, that changes the world a little bit. But anyway, let's assume that is, and I'll go back if it's not. The KSS here is not the... Are they the first train? Yeah, they're the first train to get the advantage of Green Track, or the first company to get the advantage of Green Track, which was enabled them to make a swallow and get themselves a 3+3. And that's really the danger here, is that someone will be able, that many of the companies will be able to, you know, make a swallow in order to reach that train. They don't have the cash on hand. He could have, again, bought a 3 train without, but the 3+3 seems much more valuable to him. As to where he's going with it, that's kind of tough because he's got to go straight with the Berlin track. So he's going to have to start carving out some new track for himself, or else hook in to the D's run here. Or maybe expand something here and throw a dot down. Who knows? But anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to look at. We continue forward. You see some of the companies have 2 trains. Some of them that have gone do not. Not even just minors. I think some of the major, or the regionals, for example, the SB, which needed to try to bail the G out here, stuff like that. Where they're going to be kind of stuck in a rut because they ran themselves into some problems. I did find I was missing just about $100 off the LWNR for a train. Given that they sold one of their shares, I think I forgot to put the cash into the treasury. This is going to be a continuing problem with all these different corporations trying to, you know, have some idea that I've done all the transitions of money and transfers of money correctly. In addition, the arithmetic for figuring out half runs when I've got some shares in the company treasury. 1870 has this too, but there's just so many little companies and everything that it's just so much more likely. In this case, I was able to edge out the 3+3 train by making a half swallow. There's just a level of mental, mechanical type aspects to this that go beyond what I'm happy with. My mind should not be on trying to calculate out, hey, can I eke out just enough to get that train, you know, by doing this, that, and the other. There's enough of that in simpler XX games. And this takes it to a greater level by some of the mechanisms they put in place. They're mechanisms that I generally do not mind all that much, but when it comes down to, I have so many options on how to finance what's going on, I think it kind of gets in the way. Between half swallows and shares that produce money, you know, I choose one or the other. Don't make both, because it just starts getting too complicated. Too many options. And it's especially bad in a situation like this where there's just so many things to keep track of, so much going on, that it just magnifies the problem beyond where it normally is. I don't think that much is gained by that level of granularity. Now, of course, I could option the game and say, you know, well, I'll change that rule because I don't like it, and I don't know how much it adds. It adds flexibility, but who cares, you know, right? Anyway, we're getting a view of how much track is being laid and how filled the board is kind of getting in various areas. A view of the track as it develops. We just ran the St. Petersburg little miner that showed up because the main the regional railway was destroyed, right? They're building out this way, but they're using the Gulf of Finland to connect to here, and then the sea is also going to be using that as well to link up. So, you know, we got some kind of nice situations there. That allows me to not have to pay to build track here if I wish. I'm going to upgrade and maybe do other things, but as it stands, I don't have to pay quite yet, so maybe I can get to that extra train. Had a few people swallowing to get their extra train. Somebody actually bought a 3 train. I'm trying to remember who. Maybe I reversed that decision. But I know I'd reversed it on 1, but I thought somebody, yeah, the MIDI went with a 3. He could swallow and get a 3. It looked like he wasn't going to have an easy time swallowing anytime soon and getting a 3+3. He has no shares in the company treasury, so he's not going to sort of make up that ground automatically so that he can make a swallow at some later point, because the player who owns the MIDI and someone else both bought it. So now he's got this 3 train. I don't know quite what to do with it. Obviously, if I had the 3+3, I could run that up to here and then try to work with the 2+2. But as it stands, it's not so clear. There is a port here, so I could jump down to here for free because I've got a token in this port. So that's kind of useful. I can at least make some runs down here with it. Which actually, 1, this doesn't cost anything because of the port token. 2, isn't going to get me into Madrid, or yeah, but it'll at least get me into Valladolid. Well, whatever, Valladolid. At the end of the first operating round there. The C going last sets itself up. It doesn't need to make the C transit. I've got a fine route there. It doesn't really make much difference, right? But it could make a difference, which is to say I could end up running, say, a 1, 2, 3 here and a 1, 2 and something there at some point. I don't have the cash right now, but it was kind of nice to be able to do the upgrade, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd gone first. I would have been able to do it in my normal location. I've set their token aside so that I maybe remember that they might go first next time. We've got our new little company starting here. Not the right track to just lead right into the city they want to claim. And a $30 bonus for cash. You know, it's not worth waiting around. It really isn't. You don't know where these companies are going to be. They need cash early. They're pretty damn poor. And who else went late that was interesting? For some reason the A. Yes, the A is using a port here, which is kind of cool. I think I may have missed that on my first time that I ran it. Oh well, my loss. And now we go back around and the miners pay, the privates pay out again. First of the miners that was able to afford itself a train. Now this is the 3 train, 3+3. This is the M, which is the most auspicious of them position-wise. It started with a big bid. It is in the first position here. And on top of that, it hit a couple of these tiles that gave it some extra funding. So I don't know if we can expect all of the rest of them to fall real quick. Regional GWR managed to set itself up with 2 trains going on it. For a 23 run, that's 230 bucks just in my pocket because I own 100%. I could put it in the company treasury, but we don't want to do that. Money's an important thing always at the beginning of an XX game, and this looks like a pretty sweet little run there. Except maybe I didn't go to the best port. Looks like I went to as good a one as I did. My next company, I caught myself having cheated. I had placed a dot here in London. Now, I don't think it's had any real effect. I may have laid some track across there, which I wouldn't have been allowed to. I don't remember that one way or the other. But I refunded the money for the dot, but that turned out kind of fortunate because what with his income that he gets each turn from the mail run, he was actually also able to buy himself another choo-choo. You can see he's going to be breaking into Paris there. I'm not sure what my runs are going to be. I don't really want to spend a dot anywhere but London, but so it opens up the way for the Belgian, but they can't place a dot either. They're regional. They're just as limited. They could turn into a national, a major company, which would allow them to expand. What's going on here, this parallel track and everything, it's kind of a, I don't know if we really want to hook up, and the Belgian can't break in because that's across in Germany. There's a lot of weird kind of stuff in this game that is hard to fathom, but I understand the principle behind it. It's just, it's very easy to screw up and forget. The Belgian puts a dot down at Lille. This is kind of iffy because that cuts my GWR, except for this. I've got, what is it, the Star Harbor Company, so I can drop a dot here, which is kind of like this. Plus this is open, which I believe may allow me to run through the company, but I'm not sure. What it would mean for the London run, coming out of London, is that I have to skip. I believe this thing says I have to skip the space that I run through, that I don't have, a normal dot for. That's fine. That'll allow me, to get by it. The riches are not at Lille itself, although it's not a bad city at this point. I'm making so many errors, not necessarily, ones that make a problem with the game, like the token over here where I'm violating a rule necessarily, but here, this Great Western Steam Company, part of the reason I built it was, I want to be able to get to New York, but I didn't think I can get there right away. I can. I have a port that gets me free into the Celtic Sea, and then I have another free port, or a free sea movement because of this, so I'm able to run from here, not very far, which, given that, but now, it doesn't come about until the 3rd phase, which is where we are now. This is not the first time that I could have used it, but I haven't been losing it all along. It wasn't a legal run. Same thing with the Americas here. It wasn't a legal run until the 3 phase, I guess. Ran the KSS up here, which is actually running this way and this way, both hitting Berlin and this city, but that's legit, and producing some pretty good run. The E, finally linked things up here. This isn't really going too well. It looks, I wasn't able to buy the train, and I'm just not sure that these are going to hold out. But I couldn't think of anything funky to do with what was sitting around there, although I could have stripped a train off the SFR, which is what I'm considering with the J here. The J is considering buying a CHN train. I have almost enough money to buy a second train. Now you might ask, well, what the hell, what's the J going to do with a train? Well, ports are kind of neat, but I can't run this track, this little piece of track right here, to the port twice. So I can run here and take the port here, and then I can take this other run here, and I could conceivably, I couldn't dot, I have no dot here, so then I couldn't negate this unless I bought a dot over there, and the track doesn't really work out all that well. The second train, see right now I've got a train running bunk, bunk, bunk. The second train could conceivably, you know, run out of a dot somewhere in mainland Italy or something. I think I'm gonna wait because I don't think I really need to push the train position all that much, but because of the order of play, the CHN's not right after the J, but it looks like there aren't all that many companies, and there are probably more 3 trains than there are companies. Not all the companies are going to get it. I could probably assure myself 2 of those 3 trains. I don't know that I particularly need to do that, though. I already have 2 of them. Maybe a third one on my companies is too much. In a lot of the XX games, collecting the 3 trains is a bad idea. They do crash with the 6s. The 4 is a worse train, but it allows you, if I, see, I only have 1 major here. No, I have the MIDI as well. And the RCP. Wow, I have 3 majors. Wow, I have a lot of trains. I just don't know. 1 potential major. They're not majors yet. One of these regionals that hasn't converted yet. But I actually have 3 of them. So I really don't know if I need to do this yet. This is not the company that I want multiple trains on necessarily. It might buy another train and sell one of its additional trains in that case if it gets the shot. And the shenanigans start. There's not a lot you could do because you got nothing to dump. But the D here spent all of its cash to buy a second 2 train. It didn't have the money for a 3 train. But putting that cash over on the KSS, it makes the KSS less attractive, so people are unlikely to buy that final 4th share. Even though it made great money when it had 2 trains, and it's going to have 2 trains again, perhaps, but the D is going to be running the 2 2+2s using this big +20 token on Berlin, making it an 80 city. That's pretty damn good. They're doing kind of weird things with the trains. So for example, the Danish rail here. I could buy a train off the OU. I bought a 3 with it just recently. I'm not sure it terribly needs it. Next turn, the Danish, if a 3+3 is available, can buy one. And the thing is, yeah, I'm going to have a nice little 3 run here. But do I need... You know, do I need to buy the OU's train to set that up? The OU needs its 3 less than I do. But maybe these 3s will survive. I'm not sure. I'm pretty far down the line, and I think funky stuff's going to happen here. But the other is, well, what happens if I run my 3 run there? My 2+2 doesn't really have a place to even run. If I do that. Now, if I get my dot up here, I could actually run some interesting stuff, which might be advantageous. So I'm thinking about buying the OU's train. Another thing that comes to mind is, look, you know, I can throw some more money into the DSI. That's not necessarily very hard. And the next train is only $300. The DSI shares aren't really very expensive, but, you know, so I'm left with this kind of, well, what do I want to do? If I buy that train, maybe somebody else will want to buy my shares, right? It's really, really tough to balance things out here, in part because in your normal XX games, you have a limit to how many shares you can hold, and other people are all buying into them. They're gaining stock value and all that. And there's just sort of this natural understanding that, you know, Railway is doing well. I'm gonna be selling it out, and then yeah, I have to swallow and all. But it's harder to grasp here with all these different companies that same basic truth of of what I want to do. And again, if I only have a 2+2 on here, maybe no one else buys out that 4th share. And maybe I end up with a better run from it. The problem is a 3 run is what I think I want. Unfortunately, what I want is a 3+3. But like I said, if I get the dot up here, I can actually do a 2+2 run here, and this is a very good place to be. So I think that's what I'm going to aim for, and I'm going to buy that 3 train over. And the operating rounds are done, which means we go to the stock round. Another one of the little payout bonus tiles went. I think the only ones left are down here in the Balkans and Ottoman Empire, which are the tough ones to get to. You really kind of have to work. Now this guy could just sail in here. Well, no, because that's a private port, so he can't. So actually, yeah, there's just no easy route. And also he can't lay track there because he's an Italian railway. You have to wait until somebody goes up the major at this point for that kind of expansion to take place. Now, this is France? This is France? No, this is Spain. Should be, but what makes this next stock round so big is that this is the time where people get the real chance to make the decision what the fuck they're going to do with their companies. You know, is it time to turn into a major with how many of your companies? Everybody's got piles and piles of money, or at least a lot of the people do. And they've got these stunted little lines, some of which are kind of hooked up, you know, but he can't hook up into the Austrian line, I don't believe. Maybe it's, yeah, he actually can, because it's on the border, so you can actually hook that connection up, just like there could be a connection here by either one of them. But largely, you know, everything's kind of operating on its own here. The MIDI can't go blasting into Spain, etc. until somebody decides and pulls the trigger and says, you know what, I don't need to be getting 50 and 50 or whatever, you know. And until that happens, things are pretty limited. And even after it happens, there's still reasons to want track rights in other regions, so there's valuable purpose to like merging a miner into something, in addition to the dots and the location that you get. So this is going to be a particularly hard stock round, I think, although the first ones were too. So I'm looking at the guy with Priority Deal, and he's got some tricky questions in hand. First of all, he's got 3 companies, 3 minor regionals, whatever, all of which are interesting. They're all in kind of a position where they might, well, the LRZD or whatever here, I can probably keep this regional for a while. It doesn't have anything terribly exciting to do. But the DSI especially looks like it wants to go major, because I might be able to, you know, get some operations going over in the German sector once I have that in play. And I also have to consider the possibility of mergers here. The OU doesn't really have a way out of France yet, except up into England, where I don't know if things look, you know, I'm not really hooked up yet. So in the short term, there's nothing there, but in the medium term, or sometime in the next set of operating rounds, he may have an opportunity to do something up there as well. So that might want to go into a major as well. The danger, of course, is the shares of the regionals are worth more in terms of, you know, what percentage they bring in. On the other hand, the majors get stock increments, and it all just becomes this knotty problem. And I also have to consider the whole possibility of merging the miners. Goes to convert the DSI into a major, and in order to do that, first we bought a cheap share of the DSI at 75 bucks, which was the original par. Then all the certificates flip over, and now they're only 10% shares each, but there's a whole bunch more. All these additional tokens are added, and I think the 20-buck token's still available to them. I don't think that goes away. And what else? Well, my track rights are not as big a deal, but I still have track rights up here that give me a discount to laying track there. Because, well, until a miner is merged into it, I actually don't have track rights in the German side. Or until a miner is merged, I have no track rights in that section. This is how I read this. After the first merger, majors are no longer subject to track right restrictions. And the base rules, without that exception, made it so that majors just didn't have any track right restrictions at all. But until somebody merges a minor, I think, unless it's a minor into that particular major, I think they have no track right restrictions as soon as anyone merges a minor, which is a less intense way to look at that errata piece. Okay, now the shares are $100 each, but there are a lot more of them, and that's okay. You know, people might want to buy them or whatever. I got a cheap deal on this one. I don't get to buy another share at this point because I bought one share, and that is my stock action. Pushing it over here, and you can kind of see how that took place. It's the first time we did it, so I wanted to go into some detail, but I'm not going to go into that kind of detail every time somebody does that. Expansion, at least to my uninformed mind, is not a very easy decision. For example, this guy thinks he went too early by doing it, and he bought himself another share of KSS. That got some more money. You can get another train in there. Or maybe it was KBS. I think it was KBS. So that he's set up to buy additional trains. Now, there's only 6 of these 3+3s left, which is one of the reasons maybe you need to float, because you're going to need that extra capital in the companies. But on the other hand, I'm getting 75% to 25%. If somebody else buys that other share, then I have to start thinking, hey, do I want to trigger it and then buy an additional share at the more expensive price now that they're available? All kind of stuff like that. This guy's got a position where there's no obvious advantage either. For example, the MIDI. It could start playing into Spain, and maybe that's of some value, especially if he connects it to the M. And I think I may actually take that route. It's kind of a poor railroad on its own. But his others, the RCP, has no possible connection to another zone right now. He might as well just be cranking money, although maybe I don't want to be holding as much train on it, especially since I only have 50% of the company. Someone else bought one of them because it started at a reasonably low price and they could afford that. Maybe what I want to do is sell that extra train to one of my miners. Yeah. So when, you know, normally in an XX game, you're sitting on a couple, maybe 3 companies that you can make decisions for as to balancing trains and everything. But here I'm sitting on 5 of the fuckers. And that's really a tough situation, and you almost never see that, you know, in many of the other games. There's a few where there's a lot of different organizations covered in the game, but this one seems to bloat it beyond the norm, and it just gives you so many choices that, for me at least, it kind of overwhelms my mind as to what I want to do. What if I create the MIDI as a major? Well, then I have the advantage of being able to give it the Spanish track rights through this. Of course, then I'm giving up a very good miner that I'm splitting 50-50. And I think I'm going to hold off for now and see what the next set of operating rounds brings. I'm going into ridiculous detail here, but I decided to buy a share of the LNWR because, well, things look kind of rich up here, and a $90 share of that. Also, here's another thing. If someone else floats a company, I get an advantage as an investor. For one thing, I can't sell this sucker until they float the major. But another, I get that boost in stock price. So this is one that I'm not sure is going to end up floating or not, but it's going to make me good money no matter what. And even if it does float, well, it'll make less money, but then I have a share of something that's a little bit more interesting that I can sell. It's a stock option. Some people are, you know, just buying into stuff that looks like it's going to make good money still. We had the PLM merge into the Orange Surveyors. And they managed to grab a couple of tokens down here in Italy. They have the track rights in Italy. This has become a much more interesting company. It had, you know, been kind of lackluster, but the reason is, hey, my next stuff is to really start moving into northern Italy, start making my way for that big run. So let's set it up. With 3 trains on it, I get a free share from the transferal. And yeah, you know, this thing was kind of nice, 50-50, whatever, but I've just made one of my companies much, much more interesting for the long haul. Now that may mean other people are going to buy shares of it, or not. It's the only thing out there, I think, with 3 trains on it, so it definitely has some interest, but its shares go for 120 a pop, and I could get, you know, not that it's available, but 2 middies for that same price, which is 50% of the company. So there's still things out there that are better money makers at this point. If you had bought one of these before it shifted, that would be a quick bonus in money, but that didn't happen, except for the guy who did the upgrade itself. Here, this guy's been put in a tricky position. The RCP, which he owns the presidency of, over here somebody's gotten 50% of it. Which means if I don't float this as a real company, it's going to probably be floated by that guy over there and I lose control. So given control of companies tends to be an important thing in XX games, I guess I'm being forced to actually float one of my companies. Not sure if this is a waste, but the MAV's par value is being reassigned upward. It's only a $10 increase as opposed to $10 an operating round. But, you know, at some point those cards become less useful in terms of they're just not producing an income that's worth considering. $10 an operating round is still considerable, but the reason is I want to get more cash into there as people buy shares of it, including myself. And it seems like boosting the par to get more capital is a worthwhile choice. I'm not sure. Here another, I think all the 25% shares are gone. So now we've got somebody putting 120 bucks into a major company, the PLM. It's running 3 trains. It's probably going to make the most money out of all of these. It's hard to assess what's going to make what, because there's high valued run locations, but they're not too high. Not yet. They'll get there. But yeah, the problem becomes much more difficult. I had the option of, say, merging another miner into my BHB, which would have given me rights, and this is something I want to do eventually over in the French area. One of the things, seeing a lot of these floatings happen because, like with the BJV here, somebody bought a second share again. And it's like, well, I don't want to lose control of my company. I'd rather have a smaller percentage than lose control. And, you know, someday we're going to have to go to a major anyway. Fine, whatever, you know. He's got the kind of advantage of holding 100% of the GWR. Of course, that's something of a disadvantage because if he does swallow, it's painful. But he doesn't really want to float that because that's making pretty good money right now. But it'll probably flow fairly soon, like next stock round or something. I think we're going to see most of the regional, most if not all of the regionals disappear next stock round. But this stock round, people are still trying to hold on to some of them because they do make good money still. Hard times have erupted, or strange times, with the first player making an attempt on the BJV here. He's got 40%. The owner has 40%. The owner has not enough cash for the last share. However, he has shares he can sell. Various things that are currently higher, you know, at par value that you can still sell. You're allowed to sell shares of major companies. There's nothing, they don't have to have run as a major or anything. The companies that floated, there's got to be one he can shake loose, right? So he dumps his 40% of the BJV and starts buying DSIs up. Now, he's got enough, if he can buy them all, that he can get control of that. This guy doesn't have a lot of cash on hand, but he does have some excess shares. So, you know, it's just going to be a try to force one of these companies loose one way or another. And it's going to be a painful situation where probably a fair amount of stock is going to end up in here. Because also, like with the PLM that got dropped, somebody picked that up. And then this guy said, well, you know, there was a BHB drop, so then he dropped his MAV and picked up a BHB, so he has more shares of his company, which he thinks is going to do better than the MAV. Yeah, just this total chaos that's ensuing. And these are kind of problematic to remember what people have sold and what they haven't. And kicking stocks around the way that the first player didn't do him a lot of good, as the OU sold out. I mean, it hurt this guy. He had to sell off things he wanted, put cash into his company that maybe it would be greater cash at another point. In order to fill out his portfolio, the first player had to buy one of his MAVs that maybe he didn't want to buy. He bought an RCP as well. He could have bought something else like a BHB or something. I don't know why he made the choice that he did. It probably was a mistake, but I'm going to leave him with that. And basically he got himself as far from priority as possible, with less of a stock portfolio, some other people that he didn't shake down. So for example, this guy with the KBS, he didn't try shaking him down because he could see this guy's got a PLM that gets him up to 50%. Let's not screw around anymore, you know, it's just going to hurt us even more. Same thing over here, the MIDI's already sold out. The RCP would be a possible target, but again, he's got shares, you know. There's just a limit. The problem was these guys who had a couple of companies that were vulnerable. Over here, the MKV, plenty of space to play around with. The BHB already at 50%. The SFR, not public. So, you know, it's still a regional. So, he cut his losses, basically. He has had a ton of money to play around with, thought he could grab another company out of it by trying to shake it out of the hands of people who had too many companies. You know, no, the LRZ. I could have bought up those shares of LRZ, and I don't know why nobody did. That's a big 25% share there, and nobody touched them. Again, it's mainly the mess. You know, it's really hard to assess what the hell is going on here. And more table space probably would make it a little clearer, but not that much clearer. Anyway, we'll send this one up. Did anything sell out? Yeah, damned if I know, right? This is kind of a hard thing to find. Like, for example, the MKV. No, that's not sold out. Let's do these one at a time. So the MKV did not sell out. The KBS still has stocks, doesn't sell out. The BJV has stocks in here, doesn't sell out. We're removing these. The par value goes away after the end of the stock round in which something floats. It's only important when it floats. And everything remaining is floating at the top value. PLM, there's one of them still out. MAV, still got some over way back there. BHB, there's still some available. DSI, one in here. RCP still has some in the company treasury. OU didn't sell out. But the mighty MIDI, I think, did. The MIDI sold out completely. So that's going to slide up under here. And it's kind of a crazy situation, that's all. All right, we'll load this one up.